Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. What started as all things related to brain health and wellness has morphed into largely brain injury health and wellness, with occasional other neurological topics. My mission remains the same, to help you on the path to a healthier brain. So, without further ado, let's get into the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today is Kelly Tuttle. Kelly joined the Head Injury Survivors Club, as she describes it, in 2015, the night another car pulled in front of her as she was driving down the road. It wasn't until 3 months later that she realized something was seriously wrong. Kelly's traumatic brain injury marked the beginning of a new life and a personal journey of self-discovery. Kelly is the author of After the Crash, How to Keep Your Job, Stay in School, and Live Life After a Brain Injury, and Getting Behind the Wheel. Her books offer readers strategies and tools to continue working while their brains and bodies heal. Kelly wants TBI survivors to know they're not alone and there's hope of getting better. She got better and they can too. Kelly is a member of the California Association for Nurse Practitioners, the California Association of Nurses, National Nurses United, and the Honor Society of Nursing Sigma Theta Tau International. She earned her Master of Science in Nursing from Gonzaga University and her Bachelor of Science from Nursing from California State University, Fresno. A longtime martial arts student, Kelly has a second-degree black belt in kenpõ karate and a blue belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She's also an obsessed knitter without enough storage space for her yarn and a lover of adult coloring books and pencils. I love how much we have in common, Kelly. Thank you so much for being here today.
I am so excited to be here with you and your listeners.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we hit record. It's really unusual to find one neurology nurse practitioner who's had a brain injury, much less two. So, we could take on the whole world at this point.
Exactly. The world better watch out.
Better watch out. So we got a little backstory in that introduction, but my first question, I guess, is always, what brought you to what you're doing now? And again, there was some in the backstory, but share as much or as little as you are interested in sharing there.
Sure. So my story begins with the thunderous clap of metal, the shattering of glass, and sirens in the background. I was driving home from work and another car pulled out in front of me suddenly, and I ended up T-boning him. And it was a pretty bad car accident, but I thought, "Oh, I'll just shake this off and get back to life." And I actually went to work the next day, and my colleagues noticed I wasn't acting right, my speech wasn't coming out right, and so they implored upon me to see my general practitioner the next day, which I did, and I was diagnosed with a concussion, and I was taken off work for 2 weeks. And I thought, oh, okay, 2 weeks and I'll be better. So after the 2 weeks, went back to work, went back to life, tried to make it work, even though I was really suffering, until one day I fell asleep at the wheel and my car bounced off the road and it woke me just in time before I crashed into a tree. And this is how well my brain was working at that time, Andy. I thought instead of letting my doctor know, I would just take a nap on the side of the road on the way home. Yeah, I would not recommend that for anybody. But
Goodness.
fortunately, after that, it was a few weeks later, I had lunch with a neurology nurse practitioner colleague. At the time, I was a cardiology nurse practitioner, so very little knowledge about concussions and brain injuries. And she was very curious about my recovery and asked me how I was doing. And I shared with her what was going on, and then I mentioned falling asleep at the wheel. But I said, it's okay. I'm just taking a nap at the side of the road because I was just this go-getter. You got to keep going, right? And my colleague said, no, that is not okay. You need to get a brain scan. And you need to see a physical medicine rehab doctor, which I'd heard about before. And so going back to my general practitioner, jumping through a lot of hoops. Of course, I was sent to mental health first. I finally got the appointment with the physical medicine rehab doctor, and she recognized right away that there was something wrong and took me off work for 3 months and then sent me off to all the therapies you're supposed to have, the speech therapy, the physical therapy, neurotherapy. So I started getting on the right road to recovery, learning about how to recover and so forth. And then there was that 2-week period when that 3 months was up that I had to go back to work. And I was freaking out because I didn't know how to support my brain to be able to see my patients and be an efficient and proficient employee. And I just remember just desperately looking at websites and reading books. And I really couldn't read at the time. I only could read 5 or 10 minutes. So this was really hard for me to do. And I didn't want anybody else to go through that. And so I decided when I wrote my book would be specifically for those wanting to go back to work with strategies and tools that would be easily implemented on their own to support their brain as it's healing and they're trying to return to work.
Yeah, that's a great kind of synopsis that sounds very similar to what I went through.
I bet.
Yeah, that inability to read more than a few sentences at a time when you've gone through so much education and so much training to become a nurse practitioner and all the textbooks we read along the way, and to just have that kind of inability to really retrain yourself at that moment. I looked back at some of my old PowerPoints because I've given presentations throughout the years, and I went to try to retrain myself on things that I should have known, and I couldn't even understand my own PowerPoints.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just crazy how the brain just does not want to compute. What were some of those early signs that you had that maybe you kind of overlooked?
Well, I did lose my self awareness, obviously, from my
Mhm.
story. One of the things, one day I was putting away some laundry, I was hanging up clothes and putting in a closet, and I got this really weird feeling in my chest. And I was like, what is that? And so I sat down and I thought about it, and I realized it was regret.
Mm.
I had lost the sense of regret and consequence, actions and consequences. And what I was doing was I was replaying conversations I had with some friends and finally realizing and regretting some of the things I said. And that was, that's kind of a bummer. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but I was really excited because I was like, if that can heal and return, then a lot of my other stuff can heal and return. So
Mm.
that was really eye opening in my
Yeah.
recovery.
How long did it take you to get to that point?
It was just before 6 months after
Okay.
the brain injury.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's one thing I found too as I was going through is that I was like peeling back layers of an onion. So, as one thing would kind of settle down a little bit, other things popped up. Did you ever have that
Yes.
experience as you were going through?
Yes, and I have talked about this and I share it, in my writings and so forth. And kind of what I've seen as a nurse practitioner taking care of brain injury survivors and what I saw with myself is as symptoms get better or resolve or your situation changes. So if you go from being at home and resting because you dislocated your shoulder and your shoulder really, really hurts and it's keeping you from doing the things that you love, you're going to be focused on that. You're not going to realize that you have cognitive issues until your shoulder heals, pain's controlled, and you return to work. And I had a patient that was just like that. As soon as the pain was taken care of and they were back at work, they realized all the things I was saying to them. You're having some cognitive issues because I could tell talking to her, but
Yeah.
she could not recognize it
Mhm.
because she was just on that one symptom of that pain. And a
Yeah.
lot of traumatic brain injury survivors usually have another injury, and so they are in a lot
Mhm.
of pain. And pain, even for someone with a healthy brain, can affect your thinking and your
Yeah.
energy, right? So
Yeah.
imagine, you have a brain struggling to heal and recover, and you're throwing pain on top of it. That's just oil on a fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. What were some of the tools that helped you get better?
So, my biggest tool was journaling. And
Ooh.
the reason why is that it's really important for brain injury survivors is to self reflect and self monitor. And I didn't realize when I started my journaling what a gift it would be because it allowed me to identify my symptoms, put words to it. Like that feeling I had, I was like, I couldn't figure out what it was. It was regret. And now
Mhm.
had a word for it. So being able to put my symptoms into words so that I can communicate them better to my providers and specialists, it allowed me to notice when symptoms were getting better, getting worse, what triggered them, which strategies and tools helped them. It
Mhm.
also was a safe place for me to vent my frustrations and let the cuss words fly. And so I felt like that really helped me develop my emotional intelligence with my interactions with others, recognizing maybe if the interaction didn't go the way I wanted it, it was because, well, maybe I worked too long, didn't take a break, maybe I was tired, maybe I hadn't eaten. So I could do these kind of analysis to prevent it from happening again.
Mhm.
And then it just kind of helped me just bite my tongue because for me, my filter was broken too. And there was a lot of like having to roll the thoughts back and just to control my emotions and so forth. And then the journal also helped me when I was bummed out and frustrated with my recovery. It allowed me to look back to see how far I'd come because as
Mhm.
you're recovering, it's can be long time and it can be slow, and you're watching everyone else go on with life, and you're sitting on the couch, tired and unable to fold the laundry, right? So
Yeah.
it was nice to have that and look back. And one of my entries that I read was how I couldn't make coffee and toast at the same time. And I had forgotten about that. And I would, make the coffee and then put the bread in the toaster, walk away, sit on the couch, wonder why I was hungry. Then I'd put my coffee mug down, I'd lose it, and then maybe find the toast. It was variable. And my husband's like, why is all this dry bread in the toaster? So,
Mm.
and then when I read that, I was like, hey, I'm back at work part time. Look how far I've come. So the journaling really helped me with that. But it also helps you kind of like deal with ruminating thoughts in your brain that may be reality, maybe not. Put them on paper. You can analyze them better. If you're struggling with them, you can talk to a friend. You could I would take it to my talk therapist, your
Uh-huh.
psychologist. So that was really that was helpful too. And the other thing in my journals, I tracked my health, my lifestyle. So
Mm.
I would track, okay, I slept well this night, and this is the kind of day I had. Or I got 20 minutes of exercise in, or I got some mindfulness practice in. And that kind of helped me track how I was progressing and implementing those tools into my lifestyle. So there was a ton of stuff. And then I used it to put my to-do lists in. I kept my medical records in there. What else did I put in there that was helpful? Oh, my bills and
Mm.
budgeting and
Mhm.
things like that. It was all in there in one place, and it was in a big, 8 by 11 notebook with the
Yep.
folders so I could put stuff, mail or receipts or physical therapy notes in there. And I carried it with me morning and night, and I just kept writing, and it helped me stay focused and get the things I needed to get accomplished on time.
That's a great way to do things. There was a point that I started putting things down in a spreadsheet, kind of like that, but I would lose my notebooks. So I couldn't do a notebook because I would lose that in the house rather than toast. If I would have lost toast, I think my dogs would have found it. But the notebooks went missing, and I still have two that I can't find. But my laptop I never lost, so I started a spreadsheet on there with symptoms and everything, and that's actually how I wrote my book for after my recovery because it's the only way that I could do it. And it was interesting going back, like you were saying, going back and kind of tracking the journal entries and seeing how things went. I learned so much about what happened that first year of my recovery because I didn't remember things happening, but I had them in my spreadsheet, which was really cool.
Yes,
So, finding some way for individuals to keep track of that information is really helpful for them, for their families, for whatever they want to use that for. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any cool resources or people that kind of came into your life as part of your care team along the way?
My lawyer. It's sad to
Mm,
say, but I did have to get a lawyer for my car accident,
yeah.
and he was better taking care of me than my primary care doctor.
Oh, that's unusual.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that these lawyers that specialize in traumatic brain injuries, they attend seminars and CEs
Mm.
on brain injuries. So they're on top of the front line
Mhm.
testing, statistics, reasons for someone having a prolonged recovery, that kind of thing. They're on top of it. So through my lawyer, I was referred to a behavioral optometrist, and my health insurance did not have that option. So this was something I
Mm.
had to pay out of pocket. And would have never learned about if my lawyer hadn't referred me. And the behavioral optometrist diagnosed me with binocular vision dysfunction. And when I got that addressed and treated, I mean, my recovery just big, huge leap in
Mhm.
getting so much better. The headaches
Mhm.
were better controlled. I had more energy, could read longer. I had improved screen time tolerance, all the things.
Mm.
And then they also
That
I'm sorry. And
No,
then
go ahead.
they also told me about sound sensitivity, which I still wasn't really aware of, and taught me about noise canceling technology and how to implement it so I could focus better at work.
Mhm. Mhm. Did they ever mention anything about auditory processing disorder with the sound sensitivity?
No, no, but I know that I can't differentiate sounds. I give all the
Mhm.
sounds equal attention. And so
Mhm.
if I'm in a conversation, there's another conversation or, noise. If I'm in a noisy restaurant, it's extremely hard for me to hear and understand the conversation across the table.
That was something I learned about in my own recovery as well, because I really hadn't heard about it before. But I got in touch with an audiologist who she's actually been on the show. So if you look back for Dr. Heidi Hill, she came on and talked about auditory processing disorder. And I actually went through treatment with her to figure out my own issues, just to kind of try it out for one to see what my patients might go through if I sent them to her. And then to see what I had, and lo and behold, I had this auditory processing disorder, so I actually wear hearing aids now that dim some of that extraneous noise so that I can focus, and it takes off so much of the brain fatigue from constantly trying to focus on things that you're hearing throughout the day. So, really cool little side note on that one.
I will check out that episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool. On the vision side of things, so now that you're in neurology, and I wanna kinda ask about that more too, one of the things that I learned working with a neuro-optometrist was some of the skills that we can do in our main neurology practice to see if they have visual deficits. Because I find so many of my patients have visual issues. They don't really realize that they're having it. I didn't realize I had it.
Mhm.
And then getting to the neuro-optometrist or behavioral optometrist, you're going to get those things that help you focus, kind of like the auditory processing thing does. All of our senses work the same. If they're overstimulated, it causes brain fatigue.
Yeah,
So, all these little tips and tricks. So,
exactly.
yeah. So, along that line, you mentioned you were a cardiology nurse practitioner. At what point did you become a neurology nurse practitioner?
Well, it was, when I was, recovering, I had a friend called to check on me, and I was, explaining to her how excited I was about reading about the brain and
Hmm.
help and trying to recover. And she said, you should probably go into neurology. You'd be a great provider for neurology. And I hadn't even thought about it. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. And I just got really excited about it and started working on creating steps to get educated. And then I position at my job opened up for a training neurology nurse practitioner. So uh, I got accepted in the position with with no background or experience. Well, I had some,
Yeah.
but so it was really great to get in that position. And then I just followed the neurologist every day for a year or two, and they were really good at training because they would say, okay, you're only going to learn about epilepsy for the next 3 to 6 months, and
Hmm.
and that's all you did. And then once you had that down and you're practicing independently, they'd go, okay, now you're going to learn about Parkinson's. And they were really patient and really great. Um, and I think that it was a really good decision to make that change, not only because I was highly motivated and passionate, but also hindsight, I realized that in learning that new things, I'm sure I laid down a lot of new connections and promoted my
Hmm.
neuroplasticity for my healing.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're always supposed to do, right? Is to try to learn something new every day. And I had a really good mentor when I was first becoming a neuro nurse practitioner as well, who said to maintain your brain cells or to get better with it, you should keep active three ways: mentally, socially, and physically. And that mental piece, that's the relearning something or learning something new every day. Heck, I'm on Duolingo now just so I can try to do something a little bit every day. I do one lesson because that's all I can tolerate, but
Yeah.
it's a really cool practice to relearn things. And I've talked to other people that have had their brain injuries and gone on to get doctorate degrees afterwards. And that process of learning really does stimulate a lot of that neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very cool. What are some of the things that you wish you had known going into all of this?
I wish I had known about neurofatigue and what an impact it would have on my life because I kept thinking I would eventually get back to my martial arts training, all in 3 months or in 6 months. And I ended up paying to my karate school months and years waiting to
Mm.
try and go back. And if I had known that I'd probably never be able to go back, especially when I was working, um, then I could have saved a bunch of money.
But there's that hope.
I know, but it was an expensive hope, Mandy.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I was training for a marathon when my accident happened, and I have registered for several races since then that I wasn't able to run. So, yeah, we have our expensive hopes that we wanna get back to.
Yes, yes. So
Where are
that's
you now with it?
well, it's, I'm so much better. So, early in my recovery, it was so important for me to work because I was the income earner and benefit earner for my family. And so there was no question I had to go back to work. And so my husband quit his job, took over the house and childcare. And basically what I would do just to get to work for the first 2 years was I would get up, go to work. I would take a nap on my lunch break. I would then get home. I would take a 2-hour nap and wake up an hour, get ready for the next day, and go back to bed and repeat that Monday through Friday. And then on the weekend, I slept 12 to 14 hours a day, possibly a 2-hour nap with that. And
Mhm,
that was my first 2 years. And, and towards the end of my career, I was able to, not have to sleep at my
mm,
lunch break, and of course, become more active and do more on my days off and when I was at home.
mhm.
So it was huge, and I still have it. It's, frustrating. I have a ton of things I wanna do, and, I just can't do them all in one day.
Yeah, I think that's a really common thing that people experience. I have still experienced it 3 years in. My patients still tell me that that's one of their biggest concerns, that and cognition.
Yeah.
The fatigue and the cognition are the 2 things that just kinda plague everybody after a brain injury, and if we could find, like, that magic pill,
Mhm.
I think we could be millionaires on this one, to try to figure out how to get that energy back so you can do multiple things. I think people have heard me say I had difficulty multitasking because I couldn't even task at times. So just that single task was a lot of work
Exactly. Yeah.
quite often.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the most important things that you learned?
I learned to be more patient and understanding of those around me and of my patients. I think I did have, I had patience, but I just it's really amplified because and my understanding of people because sometimes you'll see someone act bizarre like maybe throw a fit in an airport and a lot of people would judge oh that person's a bad person and I now wonder oh my gosh I wonder if they're a TBI survivor and they've hit their brain wall
Mm,
or they have Parkinson's and they're really tired, or, just a lot of things that I didn't realize could be going on with someone can trigger them. And we
mhm.
all have triggers and we all have historical baggage. And as I've recovered, I have enjoyed learning to understand others better.
Yeah, it makes us definitely more empathic and rather than just sympathetic providers when
Yes.
we have that deeper understanding.
Yes.
I think my favorite course when I was going back for my nurse practitioner degree was a physical assessment course, and we had to play spies. So it was like a 007 assignment every week, and we had to look at people and try to figure out what was going on. And you reminded me of that when you gave that description just now, and what could be going on when you see that kind of behavior. And I think that's something that we don't really get taught really well in our medical education very well. Because I think we look and we're so often taught to kind of look for certain things. And I think none of us really got taught very well about concussion in school.
No.
We learned more of it on practice, but school did not teach us what we needed to know. For those colleagues out there of us so my listeners are a mix of healthcare people and people who have had different neurological conditions. What would you say to the healthcare personnel listening, that things that they should look for if a patient comes in and potentially has a brain injury, that maybe they just take a little bit more interest in it?
Yeah, I love this question. I was really excited to see when Medicare was changing traumatic brain injury to from an acute event to a chronic condition. I totally agree about that. But as an example of my story of going back to work and falling asleep at the wheel, I think there
Mhm.
needs to be a change in the follow-up protocol. And my recommendation and what I used in my practice, if I had a patient who fell and I was worried about a concussion, was a follow up in 2 weeks. And then I followed up in 2 more weeks, which makes a month. And then I followed them up every 3 months for 6 months, then every 6 months for a year, and then every year after that going forward. What I found is that every time something popped up in their life, I was able to support them in getting through
Mhm.
that challenge. The other thing, and I'm gonna have a brain glitch here. Shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say. I forgot, Mandy. Sorry.
That's all right. It's all right. If it comes back, we can bring it back.
Yeah,
I still have that. And I know we talked about that a little bit before we hit the recording, is that every once in a while, still kind of want to say something and it goes away. I had that with a patient the other day. I was talking about something and I'm like, it was there and I don't see it anymore. If it comes back before you leave, I'll let you know.
I
But
know.
I couldn't come up with it to save my life. So it still happens. And I think it's,
Oh, I remembered.
oh, yeah.
You can monitor them for risk of suicide.
Yes.
That's the other thing, and that needs to be really amplified that these people need to be monitored for. I think it was the Brain Injury of America Association put out information, talked about a study that 1 in 5 brain injury survivors still had suicide ideation 5 years out from their brain injury. That's huge, and I've had some very sad stories where a brain injury survivor fell through the cracks and they ended up attempting suicide. And then on top of their previous brain injuries, now they have a new one. And that's why I'm
Oh,
seeing them.
no.
And you just hear those stories of people, uh, unaliving themselves, because they're stuck in their brain with thoughts they don't understand. With the organic changes in the brain and the changes that possibly can happen to your lifestyle, your thoughts can change, your personality
Mhm.
can change, and that can lead to loss of your work, loss of relationships and support. They could start self-treating with drugs and alcohol. And then, I've had patients who are in bar brawls that ended up in jail. This is a really factual whirlpool that these people can end up being sucked into if we don't catch them and support them before they get there.
Yeah. I think we struggle right now is that with the stigma of mental health, and there's a stigma of TBI still. So
Yes.
people don't want to say they've had a TBI. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to call it that. Many people still don't go in for medical help because they don't think that anything can be done, because we need to educate the public a little bit better too. But they don't want to say that. And they don't want to admit to any cognitive issues that they might have. So they certainly aren't going to want to admit to those mental health concerns. And it's one thing I ask my patients about every time they come in. How are you doing? Just so you know, this is a very common thing. Even if you didn't have symptoms left over, just the chemical changes in your brain can cause it. And it calms a lot of people's minds. And then they tend to open up a little bit more because then they realize, oh, it's not just me.
Exactly. My patients would just that you could see the light in their eyes and the load fall off of their shoulders when you explained that the symptoms they were struggling with were related to the brain injury and not
Yeah.
a personality flaw.
Yeah. They're not broken. It's the brain just isn't working as it's supposed to right now.
Yeah, it's working in a new way. We
Yep.
need to figure out how to support it.
Yep. Yep. It's so interesting and it's so humbling when you get to see that experience, when you watch somebody, their walls just kind of come down a little bit because they realize that they are being heard when they have those symptoms.
Yes.
And I think that's where people like you and I come in, where we've had that experience and we understand things from a different perspective. And I wish I could get our colleagues out there who haven't had brain injuries to understand it at that same level.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that, Mandy. I mean, I even had a colleague at work that I had back and forth about neurofatigue, and she just didn't get it. Highly intelligent person, but
Mhm.
she just didn't walk that path, so she didn't understand, and she felt that regular fatigue was just as bad as neurofatigue or fatigue caused by anemia or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not the same. And there was no
Mm-mm.
way I could explain it to her, and we're two intelligent people. It's really kind of sad. I think it's you have to wear the shoes before you know the journey.
Yeah. And there was a time when I finally drove through the intersection where I had my accident and I said thank you to the universe because if I had not had that experience, I wouldn't be able to provide the care to my patients now that I do. So I guess there was a little bit of healing in that.
Yes, yes. It's like it's a terrible thing that happened, but when you look at what you've gained, like people are really surprised when I say, "Oh, I gained from my brain injury."
Yeah.
And I figured this out again journaling. I went out for some reason and drew a line down the middle of the piece of paper, and on the left side I wrote all the things I did, loved, passionate goals before my brain injury, and then all the goals, passions, and values that I had gained after the brain injury. And
Mhm.
when I looked at the two, I was goal driven, I was out going, traveling, seeing friends, blah blah blah. And then when I looked at this right side, what I had gained from my brain injury was more of a slower pace in life, more into my decisions, more empathy for others. I was looking at that and was just like, I like this person I'm becoming. And so, yeah, you can definitely look at it as a gift.
Yeah.
But you can also still be sad about losing your old self and
Yeah.
not having enough energy to do everything you want and read as long as you want. That's okay. We can have and in both thinking.
Yes. Yep. There's grief process and there's still growth in the process as well. Two G's can happen at the same time.
Exactly.
What were some of the biggest things that helped you, other than that journal you just explained, that helped you realize that you kind of are where you're supposed to be now?
And when I would talk to my patients and they would tell me their symptoms or they're struggling, and they would say, like, say they, I don't know what they would say, but I would say, oh, okay, so you're struggling with word finding. And they would go, that's it. Oh my gosh, you're the first person who listened to me, who gets me, who understands. And I
Mhm.
want, at the time, I hid my brain injury for 7 years. Talk about
Wow.
yeah, I hid that, and so when my patients would say that, I'd go, "Yeah, yeah." But once my book was written and everyone knew my story, I was like, "Yeah, I got the T-shirt. Don't worry about it, girl."
Mhm. Been there, done that.
Yep.
Yep. We're in the club now. Goodness.
But that
Goodness.
was when I knew I was in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. What are a couple things that you would tell other survivors who are struggling right now? Just to kind of give them a little bit of a pep talk.
I would say that there is hope and that you can't really hurry your healing. You can't hurry your brain injury healing. I often tell my patients your brain chooses when it wants to heal, but you
Mhm.
can certainly do things to support your brain's healing and just try to be really patient and kind to yourself and tell yourself when maybe you're frustrated you didn't get to the dishes before going to bed. Just say, I did my best. Today I did my best. And tomorrow's another day. So just really having that self-care and patience with yourself in your recovery. And if you can get some humor with it, that's even better.
Yeah, we have a phrase, and I hope not to offend anybody with this in my house, but we say words are hard, brain is dumb. Because there are times when the words just don't want to come. So we've made it into a little bit of a joke with that one.
Yes.
Yeah. Brain isn't actually dumb. It's working really hard, but there are moments that the words don't want to come. It happens. And so along that line, it's kind of a good segue for that one. You've written a couple books. Tell us more about those.
So my book After the Crash, it is about getting back to work. And in my book, I had the pillars that form the foundation of brain injury recovery. You'll recognize these: sleep, getting 7 to 9 hours sleep at night, eating a whole food plant-based diet, mindfulness, practice mindfulness, exercise, movement, get outside. And the fifth one is financial wellness. So in my book, I do talk about protecting your job, utilizing a Federal Medical Leave Act, the difference between taking like a block of time for FMLA and then utilizing intermittent, communicating with your employer, when to decide when you want to communicate with your employer about your disability, asking about accommodations, work accommodations, utilizing resources for if you're a part of a union from your labor rep, and reaching out to an employment lawyer if you need to consult them about that, and just becoming more aware of the American Disabilities Act, and the fair employment departments in your state, and just kind of knowing your rights. And then I also talk. The other thing I like to share is AskJan, as you know.org, where people can go and find accommodations that will help support their brain. Because even though you're tired and you're healing and you don't feel good, you really have to take control of your recovery and how to support your brain, because you are the only person who knows what your brain needs. Nobody else on the outside is going to understand. So there is a component of asking questions of your brain injury specialist and your therapist, but there is also the other component that you've got to look and find out what would work best for you too.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a piece that I talk to my patients about all the time too. It's just that getting back to work. I have a large number of work comp patients that come in. So that's every single visit. We're talking about, okay, when? Okay, when? And I don't have my magic wand. It broke when my filter broke. So, haven't been able to pull that one back together. I wish I could tell people a good, clear timeline, but everyone is so individual. And that's the number one thing that comes up is, when can I go back to work and how do I go back to work? So those are long conversations. So thank you for putting that on paper so people can take a look at that. So I might have to start referring my patients to that one. And then where can people find you if they want to find your book, your story, anything else that's going on with you?
The best way to find me is on my website, kellytuttle.org. And you can actually purchase my book from my website if you want, or
Cool.
any of your favorite bookstores. It's also on Audible, so if you're not able to read, you can listen to it. And yeah, check me out on my podcast, The Mindful Return.
Very cool. Very cool. I will put all of those links in the show notes so people can find you and don't have to write anything down and then cause, another car accident.
No, we don't want that.
No, no, we don't. So, any last words of wisdom you want to share with our listeners as we wrap up today?
Yeah, so there's this Japanese proverb: the warrior falls down 7 times, stands up 8. And I like to remind people that, when you hear that proverb, you think that the soldier is standing up by themselves, but you don't hear what probably is happening is that soldier's being lifted up by his comrades, his general, his family, and his friends. So don't do this alone. Surround yourself with trusted family and friends. Keep in good contact with your brain injury specialist, and definitely seek out a support group to help you get through your recovery.
Good words to end on. Thank you so much for being here today, Kelly.
Thank you for having me, Mandy. It was great
Of
talking to you.
course. It was. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, leave a comment, and share it so that others can benefit. Please also consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. You can also go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to catch the latest info and get links on all of the social medias there. See you next time.